Welcome back to the Julian J Franco Show, a show where I bring to you the greatest minds in the world, but people more importantly who I feel are genuine, people who I would want to hang out with behind the scenes and off camera. And Neil deGrasse Tyson is, number one to me, one of the greatest educators, entertainers, and authors of our time. He is the host of the popular podcast StarTalk Radio and Emmy Award-winning National Geographic Channel shows StarTalk and Cosmos, which ran in over 180 countries, which is mind-boggling. He earned his BA in physics from Harvard and his Ph.D. in astrophysics from Columbia, the author of more than a dozen books, including the best-selling Astrophysics for People in a Hurry. And how long was this on the New York Times bestseller list?
Almost 2 years, 80-something weeks. So yeah, it surprised me. I was, oh my gosh, yeah. So people resonated with, it's odd to juxtapose the word astrophysics and being in a hurry. That's kind of almost comical, but people totally resonated with it. And I wanted to make it clear, no, this is not astrophysics for dummies, although the title had already been taken. It's real astrophysics. It's just, if you're in a hurry and you have to dip in and you can't sit down for the whole time, and the book is small and short. So thanks for giving it a shout out. It was very warmly received, and I'm glad, because I put a lot of my educational insights into it for you to get as close as you can to some of the most interesting and challenging topics in the universe.
It was 100% well received, and I read it, I really enjoyed it. And one thing that was very interesting about that time when that book was, at its peak popularity, you were competing with all these people talking about Donald Trump, right? They either hate him or they're pro him, but you, no matter what, you stayed consistent throughout that whole thing. And it's just a testament of just your writing skills, your abilities to communicate. And that's something that I really want to touch on. But you also have a new book, Cosmic Queries, StarTalk's Guide to Who We Are, How We Got Here, and Where We Are Going. So at the end of the day, you always describe yourself as a servant for our cosmic curiosity. And I just want to let you know, Neil deGrasse Tyson, you have done above and beyond your fair share in this world, in this planet, in this universe. So I just really want to thank you. But before we get into the interview, I just want to pull some comments.
Wait, so I can go to the Bahamas now.
Oh,
I can retire and go to the Bahamas. That's what you're telling me.
You can retire, go to the Bahamas, drink some fine wine, because I know you like that wine. And, but yeah, and that's a big part of who you are. You speak on not ambition, but duty. So that's one thing that I also want to touch on, because I want to see how you decipher through those two words, and just basically how your mindset.
Ready for you.
Yeah. Okay. Good. And so here are some comments from the web. If Neil deGrasse Tyson was my science teacher when I was in school, I would have been some sort of scientist, probably an astrophysicist. Imagine if public schools had teachers like this guy, ... Another comment, nothing more to say than absolute brilliance. And then one thing too, it's a funny one. This was from Twitter. Please let Mr. Tyson know that we appreciate his expertise and want him to continue criticizing movies. So you have yeah. So what's going on with that?
Oh, you worried about the movie? Okay, so here's one. I don't think I went too public on this. The movie Ad Astra, it had Brad Pitt searching for his father in space. It's the future. By the way, there's space pirates in this on the moon. That's kind of crazy. Hard enough to be a pirate just on Earth where you can breathe the air. Now you're going to go to a place where you can't breathe. You need an oxygen supply, and you're going to be a pirate there. That's kind of weird, I thought. But let it be. There's a subtle point about Ad Astra that I just thought I'd put out there, since they just got asked, that if you ask most people, why are you weightless in space? You'll get the same answer for most people, and that's the wrong answer. They'll say, oh, you're away from Earth's gravity, and there's no gravity in space. No. Gravity is everywhere in space at all times, okay? If you're en route to the moon and you're floating, you can't say, I've left Earth's gravity, because you're en route to the moon, which is orbiting Earth. So if you had left Earth's gravity, there would be no moon for you to go to still farther away than where you were. Just think about that. Just think about it, all right? So weightlessness happens when you're in free fall, okay? And when you're in orbit around Earth, you are falling towards the Earth. Well, how come you don't hit the Earth? Because you also happen to have sideways motion at 18,000 miles an hour. And that's the magic speed, because when you fall a foot towards the Earth, You traveled so far downrange that Earth's surface curved away from you by a foot. So you are eternally falling towards Earth, but because Earth is round, you never hit it. And in that free fall state, you are weightless. And by the way, free fall, we can do it a cleaner example on an elevator. You're standing in an elevator and you're squeezing a scale, and how much you weigh? 175 pounds? So there you go. And I cut the elevator cable. The elevator falls, the scale falls, and you fall, all at exactly the same rate. You're no longer squeezing the scale. Your scale reads 0. If you are holding a ball in front of your face, and I haven't cut the cable yet, and you let go, the ball drops. But now you hold the ball, I cut the cable, now let go of the ball. You're falling, the elevator's falling, the ball is falling at exactly the same rate. So it looks to you like the ball is floating in front of your face. That is the state of weightlessness. If you are coasting anywhere in the universe, you're in free fall and you are weightless. Getting back to Ad Astra, they were getting to the moon very quickly because they had big engines and they accelerated most of the way. If you are accelerating engines, you have artificial gravity inside of your spacecraft. You will not be weightless. And all the scenes they had of them being weightless, they had engines firing, and they would have not been weightless. And somebody should have known that, because they otherwise had a lot of good science in it, and they just pissed on that fact and made me angry. So I got that off my chest.
You came back very strong, and I know a lot of fans are going to be very happy to hear that segment. Wow, very interesting. Now, before we move on to the actual interview, I just wanted to talk about your book, Cosmic Queries, StarTalk's Guide to Who We Are, How We Got Here, and Where We Are Going. And this is a review that somebody left, and there's so many similar to this one. Here it goes. I've spent the evening strolling laps around my apartment, skimming, reading, laughing, and wowing at the gorgeous photos and fascinating blurbs inside. It is basically formatted as the perfect book for me. It's got long-form chapters for traditional sit-down read, but it also peppered throughout with fascinating blurbs that I just couldn't stand to not continue reading. So when you hear that about your new book, how does that make you feel?
So in any creative act, what you hope is that your intentions in what you've created and are offering are received in the way you had intended them. Right? Only then are you actually communicating. Otherwise, you're just talking to yourself, right? Well, I'll write this and they take it or they don't, or they understand it or they don't. But if you create something where that's the response, I'm saying we succeeded. Because the extra bits, there's quite a smattering of my tweets in there as well. And tweets are short form communication, of course. And these are tweets inspired by the content of the chapter as you get through it. And the tweet, I view them as like little biscuits, right? Well, I worked through some hard paragraphs here. Oh, there's a tweet. So that kind of brightens you up, it awakens you, and it gives you sort of energy to continue. Because there's real science in this book, anchored to the deepest questions we have ever asked as a species. And some questions we got the answer to, and we're good in the textbook. Other questions that people have asked us are well, here's the best we've got. This could change in a while. We don't know. And then there's some questions we don't even know if it's the right question to begin with. And I'm very honest about that in the flow of this, and co-written with James Trefil. He's a prolific physicist. And so what we try to do is put it out there and be candid with you about what we know and what we don't know, and where the bleeding edge is of cosmic discovery. But all it takes is curiosity and wonder. That's what you need. And I like to think that maybe this will stimulate this in you as well. And if you have that, those are as we say, the twin engines of exploration and discovery. So this is a book of discovery. And in the end, no, you're not going to get all the answers, because we don't have all the answers. And deal with it. Right.
I love how you said that, and it's definitely going to encourage a lot more discoveries to be unfolded because of that. Now, I'm taking it all the way towards the end, and usually in the end of your interviews, you are always asked about the afterlife and things of that nature. So I just wanted to start the podcast with that in mind. So you said it is the knowledge that I'm going to die that creates the focus I bring to being alive, right? That creates that urgency to say I love you now rather than later. And a quote that you want on your tombstone is, be ashamed to die until you have scored some victory for humanity. So obviously everything you say is very inspiring to people, but I wanted just to follow up on that quote and ask you, do you believe that there are some people that may not be able to score a victory for humanity, that their role in this life may not be as grand as everybody else's? Does that make sense?
Yeah, sure. And I've thought about that a lot. It's an important distinction to make. First of all, I want to give credit for that quote. That quote is from the educator Horace Mann, and a lot of the sort of the structure and thinking about the educational system of our country is anchored on his writings. This is early 1800s, mid 1800s even. So Horace Mann, there's even some schools named after him. So that quote I've taken to heart. Then I thought about it and I said, well, not everybody has written books or is famous or has a TV show, so, but how else can someone make a difference? As a parent, you can invest the energy necessary to raise your children so that they can be, law-abiding, but abiding by laws when laws are just, right? Knowing when a law might not be just. People who can make a difference in the world. You can raise people who, and even if that's not who they become, the fact that you raise them as healthy, thinking adults, that is an accomplishment. Because there are a lot of kids that were not raised that way. There are a lot of parents who didn't care. A lot of parents who saw their children as a burden or as an obstacle. So something as common as having kids and raising them right, I think at the end of the day, you can chalk that up as I have scored a victory for humanity. I have brought more humans into this world that are good for this world rather than bad for it. I'm good with that. Or you can help someone else who needs, the proverbial help the old lady across the street, but there are homeless people. There are people who are sick and dying and people who have ambitions that can't be realized because the system doesn't engage it. You have way more power of influence than you might think. And there's a quote that I'm going to mangle. Was it by, forgot who said it. It was the force of change starts with the individual, but one lone person. And in fact, all the greatest change for the good that has ever occurred in the history of our species has only ever been started by an individual. And when you really sort of weigh the forces there. So forgive me for not remembering who said that, plus I mangled the quote, but you get the gist of it. So it's not, are you going to become leaders or no, that overstates the meaning of that quote.
You answered that perfectly, and I just love that you gave that distinction coming from somebody in your shoes that has accomplished so much, who's so well known, who is extremely famous for all the right reasons to say, you have your own role and no role is too small. And whenever you're bringing people into this world and making it a better place because the time and effort that you put into them, you did good. Good for you. I like that so much. Okay, now I know that.
Let me give another wording that's a simpler wording. You ready? When you die, let the world have been a better place for you having lived in it. And that can manifest on any level.
That's such truth. Now, Neil, why do you think that we sometimes get so caught up into our own dramas and our own daily routines, and we just become very selfish that we don't take time to actually help others and make the world a better place when we're gone, so to speak, because we just care about us.
I can't, in a free society, I can't require that everybody care about everybody else. One of the great criticisms logged by the political left on the political right is that they don't care about the underprivileged or the people without opportunity. And so at the very center of this is a philosophy of, if I have the power to help others, I will, on one side. And the other side is, if I have the power to help others, I won't. They're going to have to help themselves because I earned this and I'm going to keep every penny of it. These are polar opposite philosophies on how one might conduct their lives. In a free society, I can't require you to care about others. What I might be able to say is, isn't your life better if when you walk down the street, there are no homeless people? Is your city you live in better if there are no homeless people? So why not try to do something about it? If you just say, well, I'm self-made and they're going to have to self-make themselves, but they're in the streets that you're walking on. There's a restaurant you want to go to and you're stepping over them to do this. Wouldn't it be a better city if it didn't have homeless people? And so I think there are ways to access those who don't think this way so that they can maybe internalize it and have it even be a selfish reason. I'm going to help the homeless people because I'm tired of looking at you. I'll take that. I'll take it. If that's your reason, I'll still take it. I value the freedoms that people have in a free society. And I'm not going to require that you care about others. But I'm just glad I live in a world where there are people who do. And there you have it. My parents cared about others. And a lot of that was inculcated in me. My father was a sociologist. He worked, not an academic sociologist, he was a practical sociologist and worked for New York City during the Civil Rights Movement. My mother became a gerontologist, a new field at the time, caring about a science of what it is to care about the aged. All right, and so and here's their son, the astrophysicist. So I was anchored. I had proper anchoring, and I don't regret a minute of it.
That's incredible. And talking about proper anchoring, we're definitely going to get to your parents because I was definitely fascinated with the both of them. And I just recently saw the interview that you did with your mother, and I thought that was so precious. And I loved it, Neil. Like that stuff like that.
The Mother's Day interview.
Yeah.
Okay.
It was exceptional. Anybody who's watching or listening to this podcast right after that, go check that one out. You'll see a whole different side of him, and you get to learn about him growing up. And it's a really sweet one. Now, when it comes to philosophies and the way the world works, we have the political system, we have conservatives, we have liberals, and you somewhat express yourself to be a liberal at times, but you read The Conscience of a Conservative by Barry Goldwater, and the fact that you're able to read things that you don't necessarily agree on right away or something that you may not categorize yourself on, it just shows how open-minded you are. So I just really wanted to ask you a question about politics, and why do you think there's so much division in it?
Yeah, I think division in politics is not new. Just want to put it out there. I think the scale to which it can engage people and the energy that people can invest in their sort of tribal ways, I think is greater than ever before. But maybe it would have been just this way 100 years ago if we had the internet 100 years ago, right? So I don't want to uniquely implicate the problem as a problem of modern times. I don't want to do that. But what I will say is and this is a really subtle but I think important point. What is different is there was a day where you could go to a cocktail party and you can say, oh, who are you voting for tomorrow? Oh, I'm voting for Arnold Schmednick. Okay. Oh, I'm voting for, Joseph, whatever. And you can say, well, oh, what attracts you about him? Oh, I like this policy and this. Well, how about you? Oh, yeah, I like this about them. Okay, well, good luck. And then go have a beer. Today, if anyone has an opinion that's different from yours, you somehow feel obligated to fight them, declare that there's something flawed about their opinion, and that they should agree with you with your opinion. This is the model that is unfolding in social media right now. So I was tired of having those conversations. So my tweets do not communicate opinion because, first of all, I don't really care if you have my opinion. Second, even if I did offer my opinion, it would just be a fight. not an honest conversation about differing views. So I've stopped. So if you look carefully at my social media posts, they're not opinions. I offer perspectives, and I offer, I would say they lean progressive, but taken in their stark words, no, they're not. I never said anything bad about Donald Trump. I said something bad about the White House doctor once, because that's scientist talking to medical doctor. I felt I could do that. But no, I don't. Oh, sorry. I did post an opinion once. You ready? It was after Star Wars The Force Awakens, the introduction of BB-8. And I said, BB-8 is way cuter than R2-D2. I just put it out there knowing it was going to cause a fight. And of course it caused a fight. But no, I just don't put out opinions. I don't care what your opinion is, as long as it's deeply informed. As an educator, that's my job.
Beautifully said. And I just want to let you know that I've prepared questions, a lot of questions for you, but it's so easy just to get in some sort of trance when you speak that I almost forget everything, and I'm just hooked for word.
I'll make them soundbite answers. How about that?
No. It's incredible what you're able to do. Now, just to go to like your past and just the fortitude that you have. And speaking of your father, right? He was active during the civil rights. And I know you experienced moments of microaggressions and something similar to like you're waiting for a cab to go to Harlem, but they wouldn't stop because they knew you were going there. So a part of that could be because you're a male, because you're large, because your skin color. But my question to you is like, how did you parlay these situations into fuel to just keep on excelling and keep on being the best version of yourself?
Very important question, but let me back you up for a second. Catching the taxis that wouldn't pick me up, it's not because I was going to Harlem. They don't know my destination. In fact, in very few of the cases was that the case. It's that I want to get in a cab and head in a direction which, if it continued, would take you to Harlem. All right? I work at the American Museum of Natural History, which is uptown, not as high uptown as Harlem. So I would want to get in a taxi downtown going north, and they wouldn't pick me up, out of, quote, fear that I'd be going to Harlem and they're afraid of Harlem. Okay, so these, and that's just one, I could go on and on and on. But today I think they would be called microaggressions. And back then, you have to learn, I don't know, do you learn this? Is it psychological grit? It's the cab driver's decision to not pick me up does not stand between me and my life's ambitions and my life's goals. And so there's a limit to how much I will distract myself based on that cab driver's conduct. Most microaggressions are between people for whom they do not have power, they don't actually have power over you. And as Martin Luther King said, you can only be ridden if your back is bent. So, no, I was not going to let any of that pull me down. And in fact, I flipped it and I said, all right, here's a fuel tank that I carry with me. Let me use that to fuel my tank. Not to get me angry, but to enhance my motivation to succeed. So that the day will arise when I have achieved something, and then I can look back and I say, I've achieved this, yet that person actually didn't get my money that day. All right, that they lost out. Not knowing that, in fact, I think I'm a good tipper. All right, they didn't even get that. Okay, so there are people who are thinking that they're acting in the best interest of their own lives, when in fact, I just kept catapulting forward. So yeah, it's possible to do that. And I don't know how you get that mental state. I think there were fewer active sort of psychologists with students back in the day. Psychologists, as they became a bigger role in the mental health of students, we would learn that bullies can be more than just someone who might physically threaten you, right? They can emotionally harm you. Especially today with the forces of the internet, they can, oh my gosh, right? So that's an important advance in our understanding and our sensitivity to what goes on in school, right? There's an interesting sort of flip side to that, which is if Every time someone is aggressive with you, you then go to counseling, and then you report the person and they get taken out of school, whatever. Then I don't know where the training ground is to deal with difficult people. Where is that today? I don't know. Look at how many movie plots pivot on the person who was being bullied finally standing up to the bully. I don't think there's a psychologist with a degree on the wall who will say, go back to school and punch the bully in the face. I don't think they're going to tell you that. But just think of look at even Back to the Future, right? The bully, and then he stood up to him, and then he changed, the bully changed, everything changed. And of course, that's a movie, it is fiction, but you know what my father said? If someone bullies you, punch him in the face. That's exactly what my father, this is like advice handed down from Mount Olympus, you know? And then finally the bully will respect you, kind of thing. And it didn't even occur to anybody to report the bully to the principal, right? I don't know why. We probably could have, but you didn't even think to do that. So I guess what I'm saying is I know over those years, in order to deal with it, and not say to myself, oh my gosh, this is affecting me, how will I ever survive it? It's, my gosh, I have to stand up to this. I have to figure out the pathways to resist this. And that gave me some resilience, that's the word, going forward in life. Dealing with difficult people, racist people, sexist people, people who, you know, just all the ists that bedevil our society. And there, by the way, my father was never angry. Okay? You know this image of the angry black man from the 1960s? He was confronted all the same challenges, but he was never angry. Or if he was, I never saw that at home. Okay? The angry man coming home, usually you feel that, all right? So I'm going to put it out there and say he was not that type. He saw people as victims of their own prejudice. I mean, just think about it. If you grow up in a family and everyone around you would say, nigger this, nigger, using the N-word, and that's how you're going to be that, all right? He had a level of compassion, even for the people screaming against integration, that I thought was, dare I say, saintly, right? What does it take to be able to say, well, if we organize the system differently, it won't produce the bigots, right? The bigots they'll see people who are not like them from early in life. And then you can't be a bigot. You can only be a bigot if you don't travel, if you don't step out of your zone. And you started this by commenting on the books. I'm reading all kinds of, I have a book on astrology on my bookshelf, all right? And these are people who are sure that the position of the planets affect them in their lives. Well, I want to get inside their heads. What is compelling them to think this way? I can't know that unless I get inside their heads. So I believe I've taken his life lessons to heart as I move through life, because I don't think I'm an angry person at all.
Beautifully said. Neil, thank you so much for sharing that. And
that was a long recounting there. Sorry.
No, it's beautiful. It is beautiful because you have incredible storytelling skills. And as you're telling me the story about your father, I'm thinking about when, you know, the track coach is telling him, hey, he doesn't have the body type to succeed here. And then look at him. He ended up winning some world records and he excelled in running. So he let that fuel him. He didn't become bitter. He just continued. So I see that within you, which is something very remarkable and very special. So since we were talking about your father, and now that you're a father, what is it that you hope to leave your children that you probably didn't get growing up? And that's probably a rough question because you had some really good parents.
Yeah, I don't compare one generation to the next. I'll do that because it didn't happen here. That breeds resentment, I think, or regret, so I'd rather not think that. I and my wife, who has a Ph.D. in mathematical physics, we met in graduate school, we committed to sort of raising our kids so that they be scientifically literate as a minimum, They don't have to be scientists, and they probably won't end up being scientists based on their current trajectories, but they are definitely scientifically literate. And I can tell you that right now. And they've been that for early on. I mean, from age like 12 or 13, right? We'd be at the dinner table and we'd have a guest or something. Maybe the guest had a friend, and adults, right? But they're at the dinner table, and so one of them might say, yeah, I had a bad day today. Mercury's in retrograde. And they'll hear that. And they'll politely say, well, what is it about that's influencing you? And why do you they'll start asking questions. politely inquiring about what is a patently absurd statement. And rather than tell them, look, you got your head up your ass, they would just start asking questions. And in my read of their conduct, that's what it is to be scientifically literate. Because science literacy, it is equally intellectually lazy to reject what someone says out of hand as it is to accept everything they say out of hand, right? So if I say I have these crystals, you rub them together and they'll heal your ailments. Say, wow, give me some, I want them. That's no. Or if you say, oh, that's bullshit, no, that'll never, that's, I am telling you that the entire universe was once the size of a marble. All right? And I'm expecting you to accept that. That sounds a little more outlandish than rubbing crystals together might heal your ailments. So the real way to approach this is to be curious about the claim. Oh, what are the crystals made of? And what is the evidence that they will do this? And where do they come from? And what do they cost? And was this evidence written up? Is there, has anyone, and you start doing this, and the person trying to sell you the crystals is off to the next person because you're not worth their time. That is what it is to be scientifically literate. It's not how much can you recite out of the canon of scientific knowledge. And so the kids were that from very early, and I'm very happy. They're scientifically literate, trained by my wife and me in ways that I could not have possibly have been because my parents were not scientists. But they valued a rational world. And let's say on what level that operated, okay? Very few people could do what I'm about to tell you my father does. You ready? We go to a Chinese restaurant, and at the end, they bring you a fortune cookie. He doesn't even open his fortune cookie. It's like, oh my gosh, how anchored in reality must you be to not open? Just he said, anybody want my fortune cookie? I wouldn't even read his fortune cookie. So so my parents were anchored in the freaking real world, and there it is. Wow. I read my fortune cookie.
Okay, good.
You gotta read your fortune cookie.
It's one of those special treats at the end of the meal, but talking about being rational and being centered in this world.
Centered is the better word. Thank you.
One thing that I always was very fascinated about is just a discussion of religion. And I know you get this 24/7, but I just wanted to ask for our listeners today, people who, against all of science, against all the evidence, they still say, I know that a red dragon breathing fire exists. And no matter what you tell them, no matter what publications, no matter what books, no matter what literature, no matter what science, they know what they believe to be real. And what is it about that individual that gives them that belief system?
So I don't have a deep answer for that, but I have a simple answer. First, in a free society, fine, go ahead and believe that. There are plenty of jobs for you if you believe that there are fire-breathing red dragons, under your bed at night. All right, but one of them is not going to be head of NASA, okay, or something that requires a very real awareness of what is objectively true in the world. So, but I value the fact that there's no one going to stop you from thinking that. That's important. That's a different country. If people start running around legislating that you cannot even have those thoughts or those beliefs. A lot of what protects this country as it is the in the Bill of Rights, there's the protection of the expression of your religion, provided it doesn't subtract from someone else's rights. And I think that's a beautiful thing. I don't have an objection to it. Why some people are not responsive to evidence, that could be an educational thing. That's kind of the cop-out answer. Oh, it's the education system. I think people are not trained to what science is or how and why it works. Science is a means of questioning nature and its methods and tools to discover what is objectively true in response to those questions. Science is not just a body of knowledge that you can take or leave. Well, I don't agree with that, so no, you don't have that option. You don't have the latitude to say, I choose not to believe in the science, because it's going to be true whether or not you believe in it. So my response to you is, in a elective democracy, in a republic, you'd want lawmakers to create laws that are based in objective reality. They're not based on your belief system, because objective reality is the only hope that the law will then evenly apply to everyone. The moment your belief system influences a law, then you're taking something that is not objectively true and requiring others to abide by it. And that's dangerous, because now you're eroding the pluralistic country that we all value, I think. I think we value it, that people believe different things, and that's the richness and the tapestry of all the blending of the cultures, okay, and the juxtaposition. Maybe it's not a blend, but it's a tapestry. You walk here, there's a different pattern. You walk over there, there's another pattern. And it's all there, but it's one tapestry, and that's the one country that we live in here in the United States. So so laws, I think, need to be anchored in rational, objective reality. After that, enjoy the show. I'm not going to go into Chinatown on New Year's and say, there aren't really dragons flying through the sky. I'm not going to say that. That's a pointless, no, this is a celebration. It's a ritual. It's cultural. And I wouldn't have it any other way.
I love that. And just before we move off of religion, you state that a lot of people go to it because there's consistent answers right away. There's no need for uncertainty with religion. You have those answers baked right in, and if you want some sort of comfort, that's going to give it to you. So I was just curious, for Neil deGrasse Tyson, when he feels the weight of the world or obstacles or whatever the case may be, when you're seeking comfort, how do you achieve that?
That's a great question. By the way, it's not all religious people who seek it for those reasons, but many do. All right, my gosh, death is mystery. Oh, you go to heaven. We got this. And you'll see grandma, grandpa. All right, how did it all begin? Well, God created. Okay, good. So your book ended there, and now you just fill out the middle, right? Science can't work that way, because if wherever there was mystery, we just assigned an answer, then that closes off further inquiry if you're content in that answer. And then you can't, I think we'd still be in the caves if we didn't have that curiosity that wasn't tidily answered just by one statement about, one religious claim about that uncertainty. For myself, if the weight of the world feels heavy, I just walk out under a clear night sky and I look up. If it gets really heavy, I'll bring binoculars. If it's really heavy, I pull my telescope out of the closet and I go to a beachfront or a park and I commune with the cosmos, because there is where I glean cosmic perspectives on all things, especially on my own life. And there is nothing that could happen in my life that is not, where the weight of it isn't lessened by looking at it in the context of the entire universe. So that's where I turn.
That is so refreshing to hear and to listen to, and
that's why in my podcast, my StarTalk podcast, keep looking up. I didn't pull that out of my ass. This is, and every time if I go into a building in twilight and come out in darkness, first thing I do is look up. Is the sky visible? Where's the moon, the stars, the planets? Is twilight still glistening on the western horizon? These are beautiful things, and they're available to us all. right? I'm not the purveyor of it. The universe is. Take a drink from the cosmic soup.
I love that that's the tagline, and it sounds cheesy, but at the end of the day, keep looking up. We need that reminder, because how often are we doing this, right? How often are we?
Yeah.
Come on. So I love that. Now, this is something that I've always wanted to ask you, because I know you ponder on this, and as you say, like, we all say we're an intelligent species because we defined ourselves that way. And I know something that you ponder on is if the human intellect can actually fully decode the full operations of this universe, right? So where do you stand now? Do you think that our intellect is expanding and we can actually grasp and fathom what universe we're in?
Yeah, so I'm of two minds. One of them is, I don't think we're smart enough to figure out the whole universe. How could we be? How is it that this species, Homo sapiens, has just the only intelligent species there ever was by our standards that we've created for it? How could that be how could we, as the first such species, have just enough intelligence to decode the whole universe? That's just unrealistic. That's egocentric to even think so. But so that's the more depressing side of it. But a more optimistic side is maybe knowledge of the universe is a ladder. And I climb this ladder. I'm Isaac Newton. I climb this ladder and I invent calculus, and then I sort of die at like the 8th rung. Well, you don't have to create those 8 rungs. You just stand on his shoulders, and then you can see a little farther. And then the next person climbs up on those shoulders. This is what going to school is about. You learn algebra and arithmetic, then algebra. These were branches of math that had to be invented. Algebra wasn't just sitting there. This had to be invented in the Middle East and in the Arab states 1,000 years ago. All right, algebra is an Arabic word. All right, all the methods and tools and tactics, and it would have further developments later, of course. But each of these are advances that begin where you left off before. So if every one of us gives a little increment to where we are, maybe it's a slow ascent, but maybe there is no ending in this ascent. And even if one person couldn't have done it all, maybe the collective wisdom of humans, increment at a time, will get to where a really brilliant alien just wakes up and sees every day. That's my hope.
Well said. And yeah, it's like we stand on the shoulders of the giants, before us, and you're definitely a huge giant. Now, you say there's a difference between believing something and using the methods and tools of science to establish what is objectively true. So for you personally, Neil, I'm curious if there was something that you believed to be true for a very long time, but science, disproved it.
Yeah, but most of it were things told to me from earlier generations. And by the way, it permeates cinema, okay? So I've been binging on some old TV shows and some old movies from the Turner Classic Network. There's some fun old movies there. And so the idea that if you sit near an open window, you'll catch pneumonia. Right? This was a very commonly, in fact, there's a plot of a Alfred Hitchcock movie that hinges on that. The ending hinges on that expectation. And if you walk around bare feet, you'll catch a cold. There are all these things that were just, don't go in the water until 45 minutes after you ate that cookie. There are these tales that were carried on from olden days, that none of which had any scientific foundation. But if you're a child, you don't know any better, so you just obey the adults. But as I got older, I began to question it, and of course, none of it is true. Like, none of it. And so, but in my adult life, I don't have any strong investments in something being true for which there isn't already evidence to support it. And if there's only a little bit of evidence, I might vote on which outcome I might prefer. But as more evidence comes, I'll follow the evidence. I don't have any problems following the evidence. That's what understanding the world is all about. So no, I didn't clutch to some belief system. No, you can't as a scientist. You can't, because it will bias you. against uncovering what is actually ultimately objectively true. And so, no, there are things that I thought were true, but I didn't fully understand it. That's different. That's not new science changing my view. That's, I thought I understood, but no, I got that wrong. Oh my God, my bad. My bad. Thanks for correcting that. That can happen. That has happened.
I remember you saying that most scientific research that's published, like very early on, people find that it wasn't accurate.
Yeah. Most published research will be wrong. Yes.
Why is that?
That's what it means to be on the frontier. In fact, if you stop, the day you stop making mistakes or blundering, or is the day that is the evidence you're not on a frontier. It means you're only doing things that are safe, not the things that are at risk of being wrong. And you can't have a strong ego going into that, because on that bleeding edge, somebody's going to find, and maybe there's even a bias that's slipped in. That's bad. Someone can point out, you have to find all your own biases. You don't want somebody else pointing that out in your research, because that's embarrassing.
100%.
You can overcome it if they know it was genuine, it wasn't subterfugal, but so yeah.
And just to wrap up here, just to get a bit more personal, you've always said you were like one of the biggest kids in your class, and you were the captain of the wrestling team, which is incredible. And your father was an athlete for some time. Were you ever thinking like, you know what, I'm going to go into this, I'm going to be an athlete?
Never. My heart was always in the sky. And I was pretty good at several sports. Well, in rowing, I was very good. I have very long arm reach. I rowed in college, a little bit in graduate school. But that wasn't my favorite sport. I preferred to wrestle, where I was less good compared to my competitors as I was as a rower. Because it wasn't about the glory of winning, it was about the act of engagement. And as a wrestler, if you lose a wrestling match, you got beat, okay? It's not, you can't point to someone who didn't get the stroke right, or you threw the ball and they dropped it. No, so the purity of wrestling was intriguing to me. And so there's that, so I enjoyed it. I enjoyed the camaraderie, I enjoyed the sports, I enjoyed thinking about it, thinking about the physics of sport, but no, at no time and I reached a point where did I only even do the sports because society expected me to be an athlete? This was a disturbing thought that I came upon this, I think I was in graduate school. I said, why am I good at all these sports? When I've known all along I wanted to be an astrophysicist. And then I look back and I say, oh, people expected me to be good. That's did they have people of color who were astrophysicists? No, but people of color were athletes. So of course I'm going to be an athlete. Maybe I was victim of my own expectations there. So I reflect on that often. The reflection is on whether, are you really aware of the forces affecting your own decisions in life?
Neil, I follow that so much more than you know. That's something that we need to reflect on and meditate on all the time. Because
all the time. Not enough of that happens. Correct. Let me tell you the limit at which I did that. It was, and I wrote about this in the war book that I wrote, the Accessory to War book, a couple of books ago. It was, I grew up in New York City, and it's a liberal town, liberal Democrat, anti-war. The anti-war protests. Of course I'm anti-war. The Vietnam, that's how old I am. The Vietnam War is like, songs that were anti-war. They didn't say, oh, we're anti-Vietnam war. They said, we're anti-war. So war equaled bad. But meanwhile, I'm walking around town, and there's statues. There's a statue to like a war hero, and he's brandishing a weapon, or it's on a horse with a sword. And I'm thinking, if war equals bad, why do we have statues to war heroes? These are people who killed a lot of people, right? Often the hero is you save lives or you take a lot of lives, right, of the enemy. These are how you become a hero. So I didn't understand this. This was How is it? Why are there songs and symphonies and artwork glorifying war when it was so obvious to me that war was bad? And so I said, do I have my liberal thinking because I've really thought it through and I think that's how I should be? Or do I have this liberal thinking because I'm immersed in a liberal community? Suppose I grew up in Oklahoma. Would I be thinking differently about the Vietnam War and about communism and about communism is bad and we have to protect the world? And if that's the case, then how authentic are my own thoughts? This was a very deep mental exercise I had to put myself through just to get some sense of what is really me and what are the forces around me that turn me into me. And can I distinguish between the two? And should I distinguish between the two? But it would give me some pathway to understand people who are hawks, who want to fight enemies, and who want to march with the flag against enemies. It said maybe they're that way because that's how they grew up. I don't know if there's any other source of compassion than taking yourself out of your own world and then looking at it from the outside and trying to assess what are the causes and effects of thoughts, ideas, and ultimately actions.
Ladies and gentlemen, we are in a masterclass with Neil deGrasse Tyson right now. Thank you so much for everything that you do. Now, just to have a little bit more fun, like we mentioned early on, we know that you like fine wine. So I'm just curious, what's a typical day of eating like for you? And also, when is the best time for you to have a glass of wine?
Okay, so my wife and I are foodies. So if we find a good meal at a restaurant, we say, let's see if we can make this at home. And that has a drawback, which is once you can make it at home, you can't justify the price of this good food in a restaurant. And so you can't go out anymore, all right? And I'm still a carnivore, an omnivore. So Easter, I try to have lamb, just lamb of God, however that works. And I make a better rack of lamb now than I've ever had in any restaurant. So that used to be the go-to. I want a good thing on a menu, and now I can't even order that. And my mom has been making chicken forever. Puerto Rican chicken, and I can't eat chicken out at a restaurant because the crispy skin with the dry rub at home. So chicken and lamb I can't eat out anymore. So that's a cost. And my wife can make an awesome dessert. She makes desserts I don't even like that anybody else makes. But she makes it as the best I've ever had, right? So we're in a foodie universe here. And one silver lining to COVID is that you're home, the restaurants are closed. All right, let's start perfecting. And I'd say we perfected a couple of extra recipes over the summer. For me, wine is a beverage, unless it's a formal tasting, where you're tasting wine for the sake of tasting it. I always serve wine with food, and it's a dinner thing. It's just part of that ritual. So it's not, it's wine o'clock, it's whatever time it is to open up some wine. No, the wine is the pairing with the food also matters here. And I like the fact that there are many different kinds of wines in different regions of the world, representing their own cultures. And so if I'm ever eating like lasagna or anything Italian, I'm opening an Italian wine. And I'm opening some American meal, I'm opening something from California. Just to keep the rituals, the cultural authenticity intact. And so for me, wine is about celebrating the world more than just the alcohol that's in it. So.
You one of his favorite guests ever, and he had thousands and thousands and thousands of guests. So that's a huge, huge honor. Is there anybody from StarTalk that you really enjoyed having a conversation with unexpectedly?
Yes. So first, that was a big compliment from Larry King. I had to check, does he say this to all his guests? But yeah, he's a fun guy, and I miss him. He lived a full life, so it's not like there's any tragedy there. But Larry King was just a personality on the media landscape, and I think that's a loss. My favorite guest was the co-founder of Twitter, Biz Stone. Because my understanding of Twitter and the world was completely transformed after my conversation with him. And so I like being transformed. I don't, if you tell me what I already know, that's not a new day for me, all right? If you tell me something I could have looked up, but you made it more convenient, that's okay. What he told me was, all right, if you see birds pecking, if you throw bird seed out, and they're all individual, okay? But then something happens, and then they all take flight, and then they flock together, temporarily. And then when they're done, they land, and then they're all individuals again. He said that's what Twitter is. Do humans flock? You can create a movement in 30 minutes by saying we're meeting at town square because this thing happened and we have to protest. Bam! Everybody stops what they're doing, they organize, and they do this, and then they go back to what they were doing. I said, oh my gosh, this was the Arab Spring. I didn't know humans could flock.
Neil deGrasse Tyson.
There was evidence that it could, and the way he described that. And by the way, he's yet another brilliant, highly wealthy person who never finished or went to college. So I'm just saying, as an academic, I got to make sure people know that.
That is beautiful. My last question for you: what are you the most proud of, just currently, right now? What pops up to mind?
It's not about pride.
It's all about the sum for you.
No, I'm proud that I worked hard and got a Ph.D. in astrophysics 30 years ago. Exactly 30 years ago, and the rest is just gravy.
You've always said if you ever receive the level of fame that Carl did, you always make sure that you treat your students with that same level of respect and courtesy, and you continue to do that. So you live by your word, and I love that. Neil deGrasse Tyson, thank you so much.
Dude, okay, excellent.